Today I will be painting hearts using watercolor and ink. For this project, I have with me some pieces of construction paper scraps. I have some plastic wrap. I have a little piece of watercolor paper, some scissors. I need the plastic wrap to be about the same size as my watercolor. The one I'm using today is 6 inches by 8 inches, but it really doesn't matter. Whatever size you want to use, just make sure your plastic wrap is about the same size. And then I also want to go ahead and tape down my paper. Now I will be using some masking tape to tape down my paper, and then I will also be using some watercolor paint and some Sharpies. I want to go ahead and tape down my paper so it has just a little bit of a border. I'm taping it down just to an extra piece of wood that I have. And I am doing that so that when I add the water to my paper, it won't wrinkle too much and start curling up. So the tape kind of keeps it in place. It makes it easier later when I am painting. It won't make my paper move around. And then at the very end, it also adds a really nice crisp white border to my painting. I'm using masking tape, but painter's tape works as well. All right, now I am ready to begin. So I'm using a larger brush. I'm actually using a round brush. This is a Miya Himi brush. It's a size 10. But if you wanted to, a flat brush would probably even be better for this, like a 1-inch flat brush or something like that. And I am getting my paper completely wet with watercolor, or with water first, and then we'll add some watercolor paint to it. And as I add the watercolor paint, I'm trying to get it on super dark. So I am really digging my brush in the color each time, and I'm just kind of dabbing it on my paper. I'm trying not to do lots of brush strokes. Instead, I just want to kind of dot it in places and then go back for more paint. Dot it in places, go back for more paint. Dot it in places, go back for more paint. Because we really want a lot of really rich, vibrant colors for this project. Now you could also use liquid watercolors. That would actually work really well too, because those colors can be so vibrant. And we want to go super dark with the colors, because when we add the plastic wrap, it will make the colors quite a bit lighter. So it kind of like sucks up some of the color. So I am making sure to try to really push adding lots of juicy color to my picture. Now notice too, all of the colors I'm using are warm colors. So it does help to have colors that are next to each other on the color scale, colors that if they mix would actually blend well. I would try to avoid using like complementary colors, things like yellow and purple right next to each other, or blue and orange right next to each other, because that would give you shades of brown and grays and stuff, and you probably wouldn't like that. So I recommend doing like warm colors, or like blues and greens would look really good too. And then once you get lots of juicy color on your paper, try to get your plastic wrap kind of stretched out so that it will cover the entire paper. And then once it's stuck on there, make sure you give it lots of wrinkles. So I'm kind of using my fingers to squish it together in places to get it really wrinkly. All these wrinkles will give it some really interesting shapes and patterns once it is dry. Now that's the hard part, is after you put this plastic wrap on, you need to put this aside and let it dry, and it may take a little while. While it's drying, I'm going to go ahead and cut out some hearts. And I'm just using some pieces of scrap paper. I fold it in half, and I draw a heart starting at the folded part, just half of the heart. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. And then of course when I open it up, it will be a full heart. So here's my half of my heart, and opening it up, and I've got a full heart shape. Now I want to have some hearts in different sizes, so that's a good medium size. I also want a large size. I want a small size. I want to try to do at least 3 or 4 different sizes, and I'm going to go ahead and make these templates so that I can trace them. Towever, if you're comfortable enough just drawing the hearts on your painting, you can do that as well. And I will probably do that towards the end of my painting to fill in some of the smaller gaps. But I do like to have a nice large heart. By doing this cutout method, then you are sure that both sides of your heart are symmetrical, meaning they match up perfectly on each side because we cut them both out at the same time. So I've got a good size for my large heart. I think I'm going to use that one as my large. I could always use this one too. You'll just have to kind of play around. It depends on the size of your paper too. My paper is pretty small, so my heart doesn't have to be super big. But I do want to have 3. Large, medium, small. You can always do extra afterwards. All right, I let mine dry, and it took a little while for sure, maybe like 30 minutes or so. And now I've got 3 hearts that I've cut out with my paper. And I'm going to pick a spot and go ahead and trace my big heart first. It's important to start with your big because otherwise you may run out of room and not have any space for it. So here's my big heart. I'm tracing it just with a plain black Sharpie. You can use any other color if you'd like. Next, I'm moving to my medium size heart, and I'm trying to make it almost touch my big heart in different places around. So I want them so close that they're touching but not overlapping. And I'm going to start filling the space around my big heart with medium-sized hearts. And I want to make sure that I'm going kind of all over my paper. I want to try to get all of this big open space filled in with hearts. And I want my hearts to be really close together, almost touching, if not touching on their edges. So this one I can touch 2 different hearts, so I'm going to try to put it so that it touches both of them, and I'm tracing it with my Sharpie. Now I'm trying to see if I can fit my small heart in between some of my other hearts. So there should be some spaces where that medium heart couldn't fit, but my small heart can. So I'm going to go ahead and put my small heart in those spaces, trying to make sure that I'm holding it steady with one hand while I trace with the other hand. Go all the way around until I get all those extra spaces filled in with my small heart. And you can see that I'm even going off the sides of my picture, and I am adjusting the heart so it's not necessarily straight up and down. It can be a little bit sideways as well. Now I did speed up this video so that you can kind of get the idea overall, but if you need to pause to catch up, feel free to do that. All right, I could have cut out a smaller heart still, but I decided just to freehand draw some other little hearts kind of to fit in some of these extra spaces. I don't want any spaces that are too big in between any of my hearts. I want them to stay pretty small. So if I can fit a small heart in any of those spaces, I will go ahead and do it. Next, I'm going to color, and I'm just using my black marker to color all of the negative space. The negative space is basically what is left after drawing all of the hearts. So it's all of the space around each of the hearts. I am coloring in this negative space with my Sharpie. Now you could also choose to paint the negative space with maybe a dark color, and I do that on one of my other tutorials where I do a heart painting with negative space, and that's a fun one to try too, but that one has more layers. This one's just a single layer, and I decided to color instead of paint. I'm going to go ahead and color completely all of the negative space, and voila, done. Next, I just wanted to add a little bit of shading to the edges of my hearts. So I'm doing that by adding a little bit more watercolor along the outside edges of each of my hearts. It's up to you as to how dark you go with this edging. I'm starting off with some pink because that was kind of the overall color of a lot of my project. And I'm just adding kind of a watery pink to the edges of my hearts. I want to do this to kind of give them a little bit more dimension, so it makes them look like they're not quite flat hearts, but more rounded. And I'm going to take my pink and go around all of these hearts. I even might go in with a darker, like magenta color on some of them, especially right next to the edges, and that will make them kind of go down even more on the sides. So if you want to go even darker, you can add another layer or another color that's even a shade darker than you began with, to kind of add a little bit more shading. I'm working my way around my picture, and I'm trying to add just a little bit of depth to each of these hearts by darkening the outside edges with some water. You can just go straight in with paint, or you can kind of wet the area first and then add the water or the paint in to the wet area. I find that if I give it kind of a light pink wash first, and then I can kind of come in with the darker shades afterwards to get a little bit more shading, more value change as I'm working. So I'm just taking my brush, working my way around all of my hearts until I have just a little bit of shading on each one. Now that I finished my shading and let it dry, I can go ahead and remove my tape, and you can see that there's a nice crisp white border all the way around, giving it a nice finished look. Thank you so much for joining me today on my channel, Elke Art. Please come back again for more fun tutorials, and like and subscribe down below. Have a fabulous day.